my life. I'm like, what is this? I like Zoom, but it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Okay, I think,
All
yep,
right.
we're recording. Perfect.
There you go.
Share. Okay, can y'all see my screen? And
Yes.
you,
And
everyone can.
Emily, are you okay if I take a picture and post it a little
Sure.
bit later?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, just, you want to do it at the end?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just let me know when, so I'm not like making a weird face. Okay, so everyone can see me, everyone can hear me. I'm sorry, everyone can see my PowerPoint. Thank you everyone for being here. And Dr. H, I'm so happy to have you here today. And just grateful for all of you and just taking time to be a part of my journey. And the title of my dissertation study was Teacher Efficacy Influences of Pre-Service Physical Education Teachers Who Instruct Students with Disabilities. And so if you hear me say PSTs or SWDs, those acronyms fall under the pre-service teachers or students with disabilities. And let's see here. Okay, there we go. So before we jump in, again, I went over this last time, but just to refresh you, I want to give you the definition of teacher efficacy, just so you're following what exactly this study is centered around. And researchers explain to us teacher efficacy is described as a teacher believing how qualified they are of affecting both student behavior and academic achievement, including students who have difficulties and/or low inspiration for learning. And in this study, teacher efficacy is synonymous for self-efficacy of teachers and teachers' confidence as they're instructing those students with disabilities. And then just to go over the background and reasoning for doing this, super interesting. Research tells us that teachers' beliefs and attitudes are very influential on both the teaching and learning process, and that teachers' beliefs about their own abilities and of their students can affect student motivation and success. So that's super powerful. And however, researchers explain to us there is not much research dedicated to teacher motivation and teacher efficacy. And it needs more attention because this is such a meaningful topic. And Klassen, he did a review over all of the most recent teacher efficacy research, and he found that it is an area that is still maturing and big gaps there. And he found that, you know, of the little teacher efficacy research we have, there's even fewer studies dedicated to PE and sport, and there's even fewer studies utilizing qualitative research methods. And he also explains there's not enough attention given to the causes and the sources of teacher efficacy. And then looking at the teacher efficacy research that's already been conducted as it relates to our PSTs who teach students with disabilities, there's been much quantitative inquiry. And then again, of the current TE research that has been conducted, we already know that past experiences, previous experiences, that fuels their teacher efficacy. And those past experiences might be peak coursework dedicated to APE or field experiences dedicated to working with students with disabilities. However, self-efficacy theory tells us there's 5 tenets total, and past experience is only one. There's 4 other sources that contribute to one's self-efficacy and teacher efficacy. And we don't know much about these other sources and how they influence our teachers' confidence in both general and APE TE research. And then further, socialization researchers explain PE is a marginalized subject. It's very low on the totem pole. PE teachers don't feel valued. So that alone is a challenge our teachers face. And I know we can all speak to that. And then on top of teaching a marginalized subject, when you are working with students with disabilities, I think we can all agree that it is a challenge because you have to have additional knowledge about the disabilities you're working with. And then you have to have knowledge about the modifications that are needed to make our students with disabilities successful. So teaching PE to students with disabilities is a challenge. And there's gaps within this area of research as it pertains to teacher efficacy and our pre-service teachers. So there is a need to discover what else can contribute to the teacher efficacy so we can better prepare our pre-service teachers for their career so they feel confident in their capability to teach, which, as research explains, will make both our teachers and students more successful. And so with that being said, the purpose statement of this study is just right there. The purpose of the study is to explore factors that contribute to the teacher efficacy of pre-service. That's a typo. It should say pre-service teachers, not pre-service adapted PE teachers. And then the 5 research questions are listed below. And again, each of these research questions is dedicated to an individual tenet of self-efficacy theory, which I'll cover in the next slide. So this is a purpose statement, research questions used for this study. Okay, and then so the theoretical framework, again, self-efficacy theory, SET, was founded in 1977 by Albert Bandura. And Albert Bandura explains that self-efficacy is an individual's confidence in their own capability to complete a particular task. In this case, it's the pre-service teacher's confidence as they're teaching students with disability. And Albert Bandura explains that there were 4 tenets: performance experience, vicarious, social persuasion, and physical and emotional states that contribute to one's self-efficacy. And later in 2013, Maddox explains there's a 5th tenet called imaginal experience. And specifically in the study performance experience, you'll either see performance experience, past experience, or mastery experience. Those are all the same thing. They're just synonyms for one another. But in this study, performance experience is past experiences the pre-service teachers held maybe through a PEP course, or maybe through teaching students with disabilities and field experience, or maybe helping a sibling with a disability at home. Whatever past experiences they have that fuel their teacher efficacy, that's what we're considering that as a aid. Vicarious experience in this study would be the pre-service teachers watching either their peers or their coordinating teacher or an administrator or a professor teach students with disabilities. So they're observing the other person, and they're watching somebody model what it looks like to teach good PE to students with disabilities. And then social persuasion in this study, again, is just coaching or feedback provided to the pre-service teachers as they instruct students with disabilities. And that can come from the peers, the coordinating teacher, the professor, the administrator. Imaginal experiences in this study would be the pre-service teachers envisioning themselves be successful as they teach students with disabilities. And then physical and emotional states in this study would be the pre-service teachers feeling positive, both physically and emotionally, towards teaching students with disabilities. And again, each research question is dedicated to one of the tenets of the theoretical framework. And then, again, we already know performance experience / mastery experience / past experiences. We already know in the current literature prior to this study that this tenet is impacting pre-service teachers' teacher efficacy as they instruct students with disabilities. However, there is nothing in the literature as it pertains to PE and teaching students with disabilities about these 4. So that was the goal of the study, was to try and figure out, okay, in addition to performance experience, how do these impact the teacher efficacy of our pre-service teachers? And for the method, a basic interpretive design was utilized. And this specific design utilized forms of data collection such as interviews, observation, and the analysis of important documents. And this allowed me to get insight about the factors that contributed to the teacher efficacy of our PSTs through the thick description of our qualitative data collection. And then for participants and setting, I had 4 pre-service PE teachers enrolled in an undergraduate adapted PE PEAK course. And the pre-service PE teachers were enrolled in a teaching fieldwork experience at an elementary school with students with disabilities, and within their APE PEAK course. So they were taking the PEAK course, and that was the outside duty they had to do, was the teaching in the fieldwork experience with students with disabilities. And the students with disabilities, they had hearing impairments and intellectual disability overall. Those were the 2 main disabilities. And there was one, I think, that had a little bit of everything, maybe some cerebral palsy. And then for data collection, I had 6 sources, and all of these sources of data collection were grounded in the theoretical framework of self-efficacy theory, meaning everything that was used for data collection was derived from self-efficacy theory. Everything was centered around the theory and its 5 tenets. And so we did 3 semi-structured interviews, 3 reflections in the form of journal entries, non-participatory observations, informal conversations, critical incident account in the form of a journal entry, relevant documents and artifacts. So like just collecting anything from them that they might feel boosts their teacher efficacy as they work with students with disabilities. For example, I just told them maybe it's a lesson plan, maybe it's a textbook, or maybe it's a handout from a professional development, whatever it is, submit that to me so I can just see what other areas or what other artifacts are contributing to your teacher efficacy. And then lastly, email communication. And then for data analysis, we had 4 different steps. We analyzed data inductively, meaning we just read and analyzed data and just to see what would arise naturally. And then the first step of data analysis was open coding, and here data were labeled with a word or phrase best representing the passage of the qualitative data. And then the second phase was axial coding to help me draw connections between the different codes that I created in open coding. The third phase was categorization, and I just grouped patterns that I observed in the data into meaningful units or categories. And last step of data analysis was theme development, and here I examined the data to identify common themes. And then for trustworthiness and credibility, I had 5 different sources, the first being use of multiple researchers, data triangulation, meaning I used several forms of data collection, an audit trail to help me follow a logical path or just to make sure that my analysis was dependent on participants' narratives as opposed to my own opinions or views. Searching for negative cases, just discussing pieces of data that didn't support patterns emerging from the data, and then member checking, just after if something just didn't seem right, or maybe there was question, is this really what they're saying? I'm not sure. I could get with the participant and say, hey, this is what I'm gathering. This is what I'm seeing. Is that really what you're trying to say? And if not, what can we do to correct it to fit what you want, what you mean, or what you're saying? And then for findings, we had 3 themes emerge from data analysis. The first being previous experiences, both personal and professional, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion boost teacher efficacy. And so for the first theme, here's 2 quotes that demonstrate how previous experiences aid the PST's teacher efficacy. And these are specifically professional past experiences. And I'll give you a couple seconds to just read over those. And here in these quotes, these 2 quotes show us the significant impact of past professional experiences, both in PEAT and outside of PEAT. For example, in the first quote, the first PST values her past professional experience as a preschool teacher. She has valuable past experiences with classroom management, which fuels her confidence as she teaches now. So again, it wasn't a past experience in PEAT, but it was one that would relate to what she was doing as she instructs students with disabilities. And that boosted her, helped boost her teacher efficacy. So that was a previous professional experience, but outside of PEAT. And then the second quote, the PST explains he values his past hands-on experience of teaching students with disabilities within the PEAT program. He was given authentic experience that benefits his teacher efficacy far more than just reading a text or taking a class alone would. So I really like this quote, and I think it's very relevant because it just goes to show that, again, the past experiences are very meaningful and impactful on our pre-service teachers, just as the literature says. Okay, and moving on to the next slide. This is another previous experience slide. These are quotes that demonstrate how personal and professional past experiences boost teacher efficacy of the pre-service teachers. And I'll give you a couple seconds to read those. And here, these two quotes show the impact of past personal experience in sport had on their teacher efficacy as a pre-service teacher. And the second quote also shows how the PST values both personal and professional experiences. And in the first quote, the PST explains that having a past background in sports and fitness allows him to feel valuable, which also adds value to the content he's teaching to his students. And in the second quote, the PST values both her past background in sports along with her previous experiences. And these personal and professional past experiences fuel her confidence as she teaches. And again, it just goes to show, yes, the past experiences are so important, obviously, but I just think it's interesting because it goes to show that there are other experiences outside of Pete that can be used to help motivate them and help them feel competent as they are teaching students with disabilities. And I think that's important, and we need to recognize that so we can utilize that to better prep our teachers. And then moving on. This is another example of a previous experience. This one's professional in nature. It's another quote illustrating past professional experience. And I'll let you read that really quickly. And here, this quote shows the impact of past professional experiences within Pete and how it's aided in this pre-service teacher's teacher efficacy. And this PST, he valued his past hands-on experience with students with disabilities and working with interpreters. Again, the students he was working with had hearing impairments. And so he was able to also get to see what it's like to teach a class with interpreters. And each experience he had was a building block for the next one, which ultimately provided confidence for him. Moving on to our second theme from the data, vicarious experiences. And here's a quote that illustrates how vicarious experiences boosted the teacher efficacy of the PST. And again, here, the PST values possessing vicarious experiences through watching his coordinating teacher and professor and peers instruct students with disabilities. The vicarious experiences provided him foundations to build off of when teaching students with disabilities. So he didn't feel like when he was going into teaching students with disabilities, like, oh man, I got to wing this, I don't know what to do. He was able to refer back to, oh, I saw Dr. G teach this student with a disability. She talked about this modification. I saw her do it. She talked about it. I observed it. And now I know when I'm teaching a student with disability, I already have some kind of game plan. Moving on to the third theme to come from the data, social persuasion. And here's a quote reflecting this tenet. I'll let you read that one. And here, the PST values feedback from his coordinating teachers, peers, and professors. He appreciates hearing things that worked and areas he should adjust so he can apply it to his future teaching. The presence of social persuasion being relevant and applicable allows him to feel more confident. And here are two more quotes illustrating the impact of social persuasion on the teacher efficacy. And in the first quote, this PST also valued consistent feedback from the PEAT program as it made her feel more confident. And in the second quote, I like this one. The other pre-service teacher looked to social persuasion when times in teaching got difficult. It allowed her to persevere. And I just think that is so important because teaching is hard, especially, you know, teaching a marginalized subject, teaching students with disabilities, it is hard. And if they can refer back to that feedback and it can help get them through that moment, I just think that's so meaningful. And then on the flip side of social persuasion, when asked, or I'll give you a second to read that. I'm sorry. Okay, and so when asked what sources can hinder his teacher efficacy in the future, this pre-service teacher explains that if it arises, bad or inaccurate feedback is a potential hindrance to his teacher efficacy in the future. And I think that's a valid point. However, I asked him, I was like, how would you combat that? And he said, like he would just be able to hopefully distinguish between good and bad feedback, and he just wouldn't apply the bad feedback. So I thought that was good that he had some kind of game plan and knows what feedback to apply, what feedback not to apply. And then the last quote, I think this quote is important because it highlights the three major themes of past experiences, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion. And here the PST explains how the major three themes provide him a solid foundation pertaining to his teaching, allowing him to feel more prepared and equipped. And so, again, we explained earlier, there's 5 sources contributing to one's self-efficacy, one's teacher efficacy. And again, we already know mastery experiences and past experiences contribute to our pre-service teachers. But I love this quote because it just shows in one quote how there's multiple sources that fuel his teacher efficacy. And I think that's something that shouldn't go unnoticed. And moving on to our discussion. So through the lens of self-efficacy theory, I was seeking to contribute to the gaps within literature by discovering what factors from self-efficacy theory contribute to the teacher efficacy and self-efficacy of pre-service teachers as they instruct PE to students with disabilities. And again, self-efficacy tells us there's 5 sources contributing to one's self-efficacy. And the current literature already tells us mastery and previous experiences contribute to the self-efficacy of pre-service teachers when instructing students with disabilities in the PE classroom. And again, we had 3 emerging themes from data analysis, and those were performance experiences, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion, and these are highlighted. And those were the 3 contributing to our pre-service teachers' teacher efficacy. And going back to the theoretical framework and looking at performance experiences, also past or previous or mastery experiences, Bandura explains performance experiences are past experiences that the pre-service teacher holds where they were successful at a certain task in the past. And these contribute to the teacher efficacy of our pre-service teachers by, again, allowing them to reflect back on a time they were successful with students with disabilities. And it could be personal or it could be professional. And past studies found performance experiences contribute to teacher efficacy through APE-PEAT coursework and possessing field experiences with students with disabilities. Answering research question 1, this study found that personal and professional performance experiences contribute to teacher efficacy by, again, just allowing the pre-service teachers to have that experience to refer back on, whether it's personal or professional, and allowing them to feel seasoned and experienced and boosting their teacher efficacy. And this study is similar to others in that it also acknowledges the past experiences within PEAT, like the APE-PEAT course, like the field experience with students with disabilities. However, this study is different from others in that it acknowledges all past experiences, whether it's playing a sport, being a former athlete, working as a supervisor over adults, being a preschool teacher, and learning classroom management strategies. So that is how this differs, because it looks at both within PEAT and outside PEAT past experiences where the PST was successful. And moving on to the second theme, vicarious experience, and the second tenet of our theory. Again, Bandura explains vicarious experiences are situations where the pre-service teacher is able to observe and watch someone model for them how to successfully teach students with disabilities. And these contribute to the teacher efficacy of the PSTs by just allowing them to have that experience, that vicarious experience where they, again, where they just said, oh, I watched my instructor do this, I watched my peer do this, they were successful at it, and now I can refer to that and use that when I'm teaching on my own. Again, I wasn't able to find anything in the literature as it pertained to PE and students with disabilities that used or found anything with vicarious experiences contributing to teacher efficacy. However, answering research question 2, this study found that vicarious experiences contribute to the teacher efficacy by, again, providing that experience for the teacher to reflect back on a time where they were able to successfully watch somebody model and demonstrate how to successfully teach students with disabilities. And the third theme, social persuasion. Brindera explains social persuasion is coaching or feedback given to the pre-service teacher. Again, it can come from peers, the professor, the coordinating teacher, administrator. And social persuasion contributes to the teacher efficacy of the pre-service teachers by being feedback that they can make meaning of and apply it to their own teaching, compared to if they didn't have it, they would likely be less competent and confident without it. And again, I wasn't able to find any studies utilizing this tenet within self-efficacy theory as it pertains to PE and students with disabilities. However, answering research question 3, this study found that social persuasion contributes to teacher efficacy by, again, providing that social persuasion to our pre-service teachers and then allowing them to have that to reflect on and apply in their future. And so those were the three highlighted tenets. Those were the emerging themes from the data, but I will talk about the other 2 as well. Maddox explains imaginal experiences are when the pre-service teachers are able to envision themselves teaching students with disabilities successfully. And this contributes to our pre-service teachers, again, by just giving them that confidence in their brain and having them be able to say, I can see myself doing this. Okay, now I'm going to go apply it and do it. If they can do that, self-efficacy theory explains they're going to have a higher self-efficacy. And again, no, I didn't find any studies that were utilizing this tenet with this theory as it pertained to PE and students with disabilities. And while this was not a robust theme, this study did find sporadically through data that the imaginal experiences were valued, but again, it just wasn't consistent like these top 3 were. And then the last one, physical and emotional states. Bandura explains physical and emotional states are when the pre-service teacher feels positive physically and emotionally. And again, this contributes to their teacher efficacy by just allowing them to feel good all the way around. And it makes sense. If I'm not feeling good physically or emotionally, I'm probably not going to have a very high teacher efficacy. So if we can coach them on how to have a positive physical and emotional state as they're instructing students with disabilities, chances are they're going to feel better as it comes to teaching students with disabilities. And again, this is not a robust theme. However, the study did find randomly through data that the physical and emotional states do contribute to teacher efficacy. And again, just by like the students were saying, or the pre-service teachers were saying, if, oh, I got a lot of sleep, I already feel a lot better about teaching my lesson. Or, man, I'm just overwhelmed with school. I don't feel that great about teaching today. So and that just goes to show that, again, it's not a robust theme in the study, but in general, this tenet of physical and emotional states and imaginal experiences can be meaningful and impactful. That just that wasn't a strong enough theme to be one of the top themes for this study. So again, our top 3 themes emerging from data were the highlighted 3. And in conclusion, again, personal and professional past experiences, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion elevate the teacher efficacy of our pre-service teachers. And it's likely inaccurate feedback may hinder the pre-service teacher's teacher efficacy. And then implications for PEAT professionals and programs. The first one being more research needs to be executed as it pertains to PEAT and teacher efficacy. For example, PEAT researchers could replicate this study at a secondary school site as the current study collected data at an elementary school. And this study could also be replicated with a larger population, with more pre-service teachers from more diverse backgrounds maybe. And this study could also be replicated utilizing a school site with disabilities that were not present in this study. For example, visual impairments, physical impairments, students in wheelchairs, students with autism. And the second implication is for PEAT professionals and programs to consider the overall personal and professional background of pre-service teachers, along with various avenues to boost teacher efficacy of pre-service teachers with students with disabilities. And again, I think I kind of touched on this earlier, but you might say, I can only control them having, field experiences and AP coursework. I can't control what they did in 5th grade with students with disabilities. And that's true. We don't have control of that. But if we can get to know our students, get to know their backgrounds, and make connections between their past successful experiences, between what they're doing today as they instruct students with disabilities, I think if it works, we got to use it. And I think, again, this study just goes to show that that is meaningful and beneficial to use all past experiences within PEAT or not. And the third implication being acknowledge importance of mastery experiences. Again, that could be past experience or previous in teacher prep, but don't overlook other factors that SET claims fuels one's self-efficacy. And again, as I stated, the literature, it's all over the literature that past experiences are elevating the teacher efficacy of pre-service teachers. And I found that too. But and again, don't forget about it, but we need to broaden our horizons and just look a little bit further down the road and see that there are other sources. And then lastly, consider applying all 5 tenets from self-efficacy theory throughout teacher prep programs in some way. And I think that's one really cool thing about this study is I was able to implement all 5 of the tenets as I was collecting data from my pre-service teachers. So they were getting the hands-on teaching experience. They were getting the vicarious experience by watching their peers and professor and coordinating teacher teach students with disability. They're getting social persuasion from all of those people. They were coached on how to have positive imaginal experiences. And then lastly, they were also coached on how to possess positive physical and emotional states towards teaching students with disabilities. And so I think this was a very unique and beneficial experience for the pre-service teachers in this study, because they were learning about just different and various avenues to lift their confidence as instructing students with disabilities in a marginalized subject. Okay. Are you guys there?
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. Can you remove your screen sharing?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay. Well done, Emily.
Thank you.
Well done. Oh, there's Sean.
Hi, Sean.
So at this point, I'm going to open the floor to questions from the audience, from Dennis, Dr. Lucero, or Sean, and committee members. If you'll hold on to your questions, we'll do those later.
Well, I want to say very good job, Emily. That was amazing, and I learned a lot. So the question I have is, out of your top 3 themes, which tenet did you notice had the greatest impact on teacher efficacy, and why?
I would definitely, that's hard, because I feel like the top 3 past experiences, vicarious experiences, and social persuasion, those were hit. They were saying those all day, every day. Like, that's what I heard. Oh gosh, I want to say it's a tie, honestly, like off the top, because those were so consistent day in and day out. And then when I was going back and rereading everything, like those just all 3 came up. honestly want to say it's a tie, because just reflecting back, every day I talk to them and just, again, coding and rereading the data, that's what just came up every time.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's fine that they're all three the same. I was kind of feeling that too, but I wanted to see if maybe, your previous experiences ended up popping out more, or, the vicarious experiences. So that's really cool to know all three are very important for that teaching efficacy. So thank you. Great
Yeah,
job.
good question. Thank you.
Nice job, Emily.
Thanks, Denny.
So given your findings, and you talked a little bit also about the applications, where do you see yourself like going with that research?
As I stated in my implication section, I think it would be cool to, again, just see it, what it looks like, and what factors aid our pre-service teachers at a secondary site with different disabilities. Because, and I love ASL, or I love the school we use for data collection, but there's just so many different kinds of disabilities. And that's what I would like to see moving forward, is what would this look like at a secondary site with different disabilities, like preferably like visual impairments. Just out of my own curiosity, because as Dr. Young knows, where she got her PhD and I got my master's, I was exposed a lot to visual impairments. So that's just something that I'm interested in.
Nice. Yeah, and Dr. Hagel, Justin, he does actually a lot of work with visual impairments at Old Dominion.
Yep, I know that guy. I don't know him, but I know who he is. Thank you, Denny.
Sean, any questions for Emily?
Yeah, nice job, Emily. Very, very important work. I do have one question, and I'm curious of your selection of the word boost. You have that in your findings,
Yes.
and I'm interested in why you chose that word, kind of what it means, and why you didn't go with something like correlate or predict or increase.
So I looked at it as a synonym for elevate or increase, because as I talked to, or as I collected data from these pre-service teachers, I would hit, every tenant every single day in a different way. Like sometimes it was looking at, okay, in your past, what was contributing to your teacher efficacy? Okay, today, right now, what is contributing? Okay, I know we can't predict the future, but what do you think might enhance your teacher efficacy in the future? I just looked at it as a synonym for enhance or elevate or increase. That's just the word I chose for that.
Cool, thanks. And again, nice job.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thank you, audience. At this time, I will invite you to exit the Zoom, and we will see you later. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to invite Dr. Young as our outside member. If you want to turn it over to you, if you have questions for Emily.
Great. Emily, very well done. So fun to hear you talk about something that you are very passionate about and that makes a big impact on our field. So very well done.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I commend you on the way you talk about your qualitative methodology. It's very fluid and very very strong. So I'm learning from you, which is great. And that's why, yeah, it's so great now that you have reached this process. It's important to see ourselves as peers instead of, someone, or just different timing in our schooling. So I definitely consider you a peer, and I think you have done a very nice job in getting to this point. I think Dr. Nichols was the one that taught me that, or said that to me when I defended that now we're peers, and that's kind of how we move forward, which is really fun and exciting. So congratulations. I really liked hearing about getting to know our students and their background and their past experiences. I think that's really important for us as educators to really connect with our students. I think that's a huge point that we need to consider. I did find it very interesting when students talked about their self-efficacy related to participation in sport and their level of fitness. I thought that was super interesting, and maybe considering how we kind of use that to shift our framework in the world of physical education. And I don't exactly know the New Mexico pedagogy aspect and kind of what that looks like, but I think that's something to consider when maybe kind of teaching students about their self-efficacy and pre-service teachers about that it's more than just sport and fitness that we do. So I thought that was really interesting. Question about the social persuasion and the bad feedback. So that was really interesting to me. So how do you or how do students discern the difference between good and bad feedback, especially when it can come from so many different people who have so many different experiences and different values? So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So as far as bad or inaccurate feedback, that is something I should have asked a little bit more. I should have gotten a little bit more information maybe from the student or the pre-service teacher and the participant, but they were saying maybe, for example, and I can attest to this because I taught K-12 and I feel like I would have administrators who like just knew nothing about PE and just thought I was a babysitter, and they would come in and like say stuff, and I'm like, because in my mind, like PE is organized chaos, right? Like if you walk into a gym, like it is crazy, but there can be organization to it. And again, you know, in Texas, we teach large class sizes, whereas in a core classroom, it's smaller classes. So it is crazy in Texas PE because you're going to walk in, you're going to see 100 students, and you're going to see, if at first it might be like, oh my goodness, what's going on? But if you like really look around and like look at the objectives on the board, it'll make sense. So again, like just having like an administrator come in and not having a PE background or understanding how we function as PE professionals, not saying they don't know our discipline or know how to provide good feedback, but I think there are obviously similarities between PE as a subject and like math or science or reading. But I think PE is very much a different animal. And if the administrator is not able to understand that, they could possibly provide bad feedback. And like bad feedback could also come from, so for example, and I was really proud of my undergrads, they know they come from a good and very strong PET program. And I totally agree with them. And they were saying, well, what if like somebody that didn't go to UNM gave me feedback,
Exactly.
and Dr. G taught me to do it this way, and Dr. G is the god and the queen, and she said not to do it this way, and they're telling me to do it the opposite way, like that, they might perceive that as bad feedback because Dr. G knows her stuff and she knows how to give good demonstrations. So those were examples that stick out from social persuasion as it could hinder their teacher efficacy. But I was proud of all of them because I did ask all of them. I was like, okay, in that situation, what would you do? And they were like, oh, well, and kind of, I need more information as you were asking, like, how do we know to distinguish between what is good, what is bad? And then how do we know what to apply? But they did say they felt confident with being able to assess if it is good or bad, and just tossing what's good and applying, or tossing what's bad and applying what's good.
Good.
I don't know,
Very
does
good.
that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's something that we have to consider is, you know, once our students leave us, then they go out into the world, and we have to help them kind of be able to make that discernment as to, you know, what's good and what's not so good.
But yeah, it is an eye opener, like you said, just because that is another way we could coach them, because they are going to come across bad feedback for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Couple more questions. I've seen in your slides a few times people have mentioned good PE, and maybe that would be helpful to kind of talk about what that means, because that could mean something different to everyone.
Sure. Yep. And you're talking about the
Question.
quotes, correct? I think you're talking about quotes. Okay.
Yes.
So good PE, one thing that really stuck out to me in data collection and data analysis was they were firm, made me very proud of them. They were very firm believers in good PE is inclusive. It's involving everyone, regardless of disability, regardless of being a typical developing student. And that was like the overall theme that I was associating with them saying good PE, finding a way to meet our students where they are, not just rolling the ball out and, oh, you're sped, okay, you go to the corner and just figure it out while I try to teach the typical developing students. They were all about being inclusive and being just lifelong learners is what it means to use modifications to meet the needs of the students.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad you said that, because to me, good PE would have meant something different. So thank you for clarifying that.
That makes
So 2 more questions. How does this influence you as a future professional or professor, whatever?
Again, just because, I work with college students now, and even if I was still teaching K-12, I feel regardless of like what level you're in within education, I feel like everyone can take something from this. And what I take away from this is kind of been my philosophy all along is we are all unique like snowflakes. Nobody is the same. We all learn differently. We all have different motivators, and we need to be aware of that. And for example, in the past literature, it says mastery and previous and past experiences are beneficial to the teacher efficacy of our pre-service teachers when working with students with disabilities. I think that's so important, yes, but Sally might not take away as much from past experiences as Johnny does, and Sally really she loves social persuasion. She loves getting that feedback, and that is more meaningful for her than past experiences. She gets stuff from past experiences, but she needs social persuasion as well. And so again, I think I'm not saying cut or throw away one of the tenets. I'm not saying that, but I think we just need, as we stated, get to know our learners, get to know our students, get to know our clients, our athletes, whatever it might be. And that goes back to self-determination theory, relatedness. If our students feel like they're connected to their peers and the people in their environment, they're going to be more motivated. And so I kind of tie that into this as well. And if we can figure out what it is, get to know them and use it. And again, it's going to look different person to person, and that's okay because nobody learns the same.
Definitely. And that kind of segues into my last question or thought, not really a question. But I think that this would be a really good and easy segue into like a how-to publication, because I think as higher ed faculty, we should be more aware of self-efficacy for our pre-service teachers. And I think everything that you've said today has really helped me as an educator think about, wow, I need to take all this into consideration when I'm planning and prepping for my courses and helping my teachers prepare for their future. So yeah, great job. Very proud of you. You did a very nice job.
Dr. Young, I appreciate it. Really good questions. And I like how anytime any of you gives me questions or feedback, I feel like I benefit from it. And you guys are helping me look at things differently, and or maybe how to reword something, or maybe how to add an explanation. So anything you guys have ever given me has just been very beneficial. And I appreciate that it's been positive. I've never felt like intimidated or anything.
And that is why collaboration is the key in higher education.
True.
Right. Dr. Shiver, questions for Emily?
Yes, Emily, great job.
Thank you.
Good to see it all come to fruition and everything connected very well across the board in your study. So
thank you.
It flowed nicely.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I had some similar to what Dr. Young already has said, so I will keep mine a little more brief. I think one thing I struggle with is self-efficacy myself, and so I'm curious about your perspective on it, is how the physical and emotional states are separated from the other categories, because how we respond physically, like increased heart rate or being able to take breaths and calm down, or heightened frustration in a scenario where your lesson plan's just not working. So it's really difficult to discern that that's happening, and also to separate it from the idea of getting like good or bad feedback, or previous experiences influencing how I'm feeling in the moment. Mm-hmm. So I know it wasn't a major theme found in your work. I guess my question for you would be, do you think it was an underlying component of all of your findings, or do you think it was completely separate and entirely?
I think that's interesting you say that, because there was one or two participants, they mentioned how, and I just thought this was interesting. They mentioned how the tenants like are intertwined and like build off of each other. And I think this is an example of that. There was one participant, he would not every day, but often talk about his physical and emotional state. For example, he said, like, because he was a coach and he was like, I got home late, we had a late game, I didn't sleep. And he's like, I would realize like having that poor physical state would result in me having low patience for the class that day. And he would say, I'm glad we had this talk, because he was able to say like, oh, I was feeling this way because, and that made me realize, you know what, I need to reset. Like, it's not the student's fault. I had a bad day. I don't need to take it out on them. I just need to realize I got poor sleep, and maybe I just need to wash cold water on my face, or make sure I get my coffee, or just emotionally get in a good headspace, emotionally and mentally. So I'm able to present a good lesson to these students and give them the quality PE they deserve without my poor physical state interfering with the lesson and their quality PE. And so again, that one wasn't as big as I mentioned, but I do think it's important and influential. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I just always struggle with that, because it's always present, right? To some
Right.
degree. It's just a matter of how you're maybe addressing it in the questions and answers. And I guess that leads to my next question. You said that you trained your students in imagery and then managing those physical and emotional states. Could you speak to that a little bit more? Because I'm just curious about what you did.
Sure. Yeah, for the imaginal experiences, and we didn't. Again, this wasn't a part of the class. This was obviously just part of the study, the 5 tenants. But I educated them about, the tenant and what it means and what it looks like at the beginning of the study. And I explained to them, like, for example, I struggle with kindergarten. That is just not my age group. When I teach PE, I just can't get it, because it's like herding cats. And I would tell them, I'm confident in my teaching skills. It's just kindergarten. I still to this day have not figured out, but I don't think anyone totally has them figured out 100%. But I would tell them, for example, that's a class I struggle with. And prior to getting that class for imaginal experiences, I would think about the lesson I'm doing with them and think about possible problems that might arise and think about solutions that I might have for those issues, and just able to know I put in the work to plan out a good lesson that's well thought out, and I'm going to imagine myself teaching it in my brain and imagine it going well. And if something happens and comes up, that's okay. I've got a solution up my sleeve to pull out if I need to. And that way, when they go in, when they actually get the kindergartners or whatever class they're struggling with, when they actually get them, they kind of have already like a mental idea of what might happen. And I feel it's like a pep talk, in my opinion, like imaginal experiences. It's like, I can do this. I'm going to execute the lesson. The students are going to act good. Here's my game plan if it doesn't. I know Jacob is probably going to cry and scream and throw a fit, because he does every day, but if he does, this is how I'm going to handle it. And so we would just talk about that, just physically, like what it means to do that, what it looks like. And then again, with physical and emotional states, we just talked about, if you are tired, what's your game plan for that? What are you going to do? And that was, the solution was maybe just take a step back and realize, I just have this 30-minute lesson, let me get through it. And what can I do next time if I know I'm going to be really tired? Maybe it's washing my face with cold water before I teach. Or maybe just saying, you know what, I have a long day tomorrow, I'm going to get a good night's rest. But just coaching them and providing examples of what those tenants look like and how to possess good states in those tenants.
Great. Okay. So for you, imagery was planning, basically.
Planning, yes, planning and then executing mentally the plan. I see myself doing this in my head.
Nice. I think that's great. I think that's a unique perspective on that, or at least one I haven't really read in terms of teacher training related to imagery. And that's something that's going to be a good contribution. And to go off of what Dr. Young was saying about, next steps for you, like for example, the bad feedback, that really speaks to the importance of having good field sites and good cooperating teachers. So, potential future work is not only, can our students discern good and bad feedback, but what are teachers out there saying is good? And are we making sure that we're pairing students with teachers that are giving good feedback? Because I know as a student teacher working with adapted students, I didn't know anything. So if a teacher told me this was right, I'd be like, sounds good. And I would do it because I would trust them. Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting next step. And then I know, where you're working now, practical perspectives or next steps might be more in line with what your goal is in terms of your moving forward in your career. And I think, like Amanda said, like next steps could be, this is a how-to, not only generally from this article, but in each area. So like focus on imagery. How can you include imagery in adapted training or just general pre-service training, or talking about physical and emotional states? If I'm feeling a certain way during a lesson, how can I take a step back and consult with myself so that I'm having the best possible approach? And that might be related to imagery, who knows? But there's tons of research to be done there. That's not your favorite area and you want to keep going with that. There's a lot of practical work there too. So this is just asking more questions after this. Like everything you were saying made me want to ask more questions, which is a sign of a good study. So that's good news.
Thank you. And we actually, it's interesting, one of the classes I'm teaching, we actually talked about imaginal experiences. It's in our textbook about how that is meaningful to people who struggle to adhere to exercise. And I was like, what? Like, this ties into my dissertation. And it was giving examples of what that looks like. And it was saying if people who struggle with staying committed to exercise, if they can imagine themselves being successful and have that mental imagery, it shows that it helps them adhere more to exercise. And I thought that was cool because it just ties into what I'm doing here with the theory. So
yeah, definitely. And that's a new addition, right? Like we have our setups already, we have field experiences. So they're getting practice. They're bringing in whatever they had before. We can't change that.
Right.
And then we're giving them feedback. They're hopefully getting feedback from their peers based on the setup you had and hopefully what other programs have set up. But that's a way to really do something a little different too. Like imagery is important and we don't really talk about it very much. And we all visualize ourselves either failing or succeeding, depending on who you are, maybe failing more. So let's focus more on the succeeding more and how can we make sure that they're really practicing that.
Totally.
All right. I think I'll leave it at that. Awesome job, Emily. Thanks for sharing.
Dr. Shriver.
Well, before I turn it over to Dr. Hushman, I have to, and if I don't say it now, I'll forget. Everyone is intimidated by kindergartners.
Okay.
Listen, this is why I say, if you can teach kinders, you can teach.
You can do anything. Yes.
So yeah.
See, that's my population. Give me the preschools and the littles.
Oh my God, I love them. I love them. It's the big ones that I'm like, none of my tricks work on the big kids. I'm like,
Dr. Young had the cutest freaking kids. Oh my gosh. They were so cute. Because a lot of them had Down syndrome or intellectual disability of some kind, and they were so cute. Oh my gosh.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Definitely hurting cats.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Hushman, do you have questions for Emily?
No, but I thought I'd jump on camera. I just parked right now, so I'm in the car. But thanks for tolerating me being off camera there for a minute. Speaking of children, I I have them because UNM and APS can't seem to get their political schedules in line. So I just dropped them off, and now I'm sitting outside the roller rink, and I thought I'd jump in the car so you didn't have to listen to roller skating and music and such.
Nice.
Anyway, thanks for tolerating me off camera. Hey, Emily, the bottom line is this was just even just listening in, I was able to take a look at the slides occasionally. It was a seamless presentation, very well done, clear, concise, to the point. I like the way you used your slides. I think your presentation style is what I was most impressed with. And then the manuscript itself, when you described your coding, sometimes it's tough to do, I think, in a defense, certainly. And I thought, again, you did a really nice job with that as well. I know you all know Adriana well. Her presentation was also just really phenomenal work. And so I think a lot of that is a testament certainly to Karen, but also just to your strengths as a student. And so both of you have done just a phenomenal job with the presentation of that. So thanks so much for just putting time into it, you know. So I speak for most of us, I think, on this call. We have to sit through some of these, and it's sometimes a little painful. This was fantastic, just fantastic. It's just a really joy to listen to. I was just in a dissertation defense yesterday, actually, in a different department on campus. That was also qualitative inquiry. But it was a phenomenological study, so it was a little bit different. You're teasing into grounded theory, you know, developing themes, open axial, selective, etc. But it's really a stark reminder of how professional you are and how professional this program is, and how well prepared you were, just night and day. I mean,
Wow.
I hate to use something as crass as juvenile, but it just makes this other presentation look juvenile. I mean, you're really a professional. The way you presented was more like a, you know, second, third year assistant professor. That's exactly what I'm sure Karen and Tori hope to achieve, and they've done just such a great job. So really, really good all around. You know, going last, Dr. Young asked two questions that I had. So thank you, Dr. Young, for asking those questions. I really appreciate it. And then Dr. Shiver also danced a little bit into an area that I had a few questions about. So really, kind of all my questions have been answered. You know, and you have a job, I realize, but I like to ask this question, especially in the defense, more from like, almost like as if you're applying for a job. And so I think I was mostly curious if you were to develop what we call a programmatic research agenda around your findings, around your dissertation. What would that look like for you? And I know you might not have to produce research, but it's always good to think at that level. What would that look for you in like a 1 year, you know, 3 year, 5 year? Where do you think you'd like to go with this research?
Sure. Can you repeat? You said if I were to create a programmatic, what was the rest of that?
Like a research agenda. So essentially it's like threads of research. Like what, I mean, there's a lot of findings in there. What do you think you would build onto that would be like a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year type thing? It's more of a curiosity question, Emily, than anything.
I think like kind of as I'm not trying to use the same answer, but kind of as I said later, just using different populations as far as grade level of the students that are being taught PE, and then different disabilities, and then even looking at different populations within the participants and the pre-service teachers, like different cultures, maybe different backgrounds, and just seeing, okay, how are these cultures of pre-service teachers, how are they different, how are they similar? And then we now know if we're going to be culturally relevant and meet the needs of all of our pre-service teachers and all of our students, will know. And I know this could be off, but I'm just thinking, oh, well, this culture, this is what they value, as opposed to this culture values this, and this culture values this. And oh, for this disability, it's showing pre-service teachers just really value this tenet. And I think just looking, obviously, like same setup, same study, but just looking at the different populations as far as disability, age level of students, background and culture of the pre-service teacher, and just kind of changing it up, and then just taking a step back and looking at the similarities and the differences. And then you could even generalize that to like just college students. Doesn't have to be pre-service PE teachers, and just see as far as a student, what makes you tick, what makes you more motivated, what makes you feel more successful as a college student, which of the five, you know. And I think that would be the biggest thing, just making it could be generalizable to college students, and then we could even put it into different careers like physical therapy or coaching athletics, and what makes our physical therapists feel the most confident as they work with their clients, and what makes our football coaches and our soccer coaches and our volleyball coaches, which of the 5 sources do they need to be the best at their job?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, thanks. That's and you kind of danced around it before anyway, but I just like to ask it, you know, just to give you a chance to, you know, think, yeah, this is what I'd like to do in 3 or 5 years with research. It's very exciting. So yeah, all around, just really phenomenal job, Emily. Thanks again for making this a very enjoyable professional experience. I certainly greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. H. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all of you so much, just being a part of this for me. I know it's time consuming and I know you're busy, so it means a lot to me.
Emily, I want you to think real, I'm going to go real practical application. And I mean, let me start by saying this. I mean, so impressive. I agree with Glenn, your ability to articulate, not two things were very impressive. It's one thing to be able to talk about physical education and our content because we do it, we read it, you taught PE, it's easy. But the way in which you so seamlessly talk about theory and methodological issues. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you and watching you. You were clearly competent, confident. You felt very comfortable. You knew it inside and out. And when I think about the girl that arrived in Albuquerque 3 years ago, and I'm sitting here listening to you, you need to know that there are people who they are not able to speak that concisely or that comfortably about some of these methodological issues. And over the course of your time here, you expressed to me multiple times that you kind of felt a bit fish out of water because you come from a very practical place and that the research stuff isn't your first love. And you kind of felt like, I'm interested in it, but I don't think this is really me. And some of the other students in the cohort, you know, you were, and it's very natural and we all did it, comparing yourself to them in that way. What I saw today was superior.
Thank you.
And I want you to know that, I mean, yeah, I know you're enjoying your job that you have now, but we need PEEP faculty members like you because your ability to take something like self-efficacy theory from Bandura and translate it into stuff that undergraduate students can comprehend and they will respect your credibility as a practitioner and you can give it to them in plain language. I mean, the PhD people on this call here, we all have colleagues who you're like, you might know it, but you can't teach anyone because you can't say it in a way that other people will understand. That is a gift and a skill that you have, and you need to know that.
Thank you.
So now I want to go real practical. And I think that this is part of the reason why can be such a powerful faculty member. I want you, so Alex is going to be teaching the adapted PE class in the fall. When I look at your study and I think about vicarious experiences in the imagery, previous experiences, I want you to tell me if you were to tell Alex after your study to add 2 assignments to the class aligned with the findings of your study, what might those look like? And there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just like, I'm deferring to you as tell us what we should do. What can we add to the class?
Okay. 2 assignments for the
or 1 or 3 or whatever. Like, I just want you to think about how do you turn your discussion section into
an
assignment in a class that like translate it directly into how can we use the findings here to prepare them. I have a couple of ideas, but I want to hear you.
Yeah, I think I love reflection. I think reflection assignments can be good or bad depending on how they are put together and how what the prompts are. But I think, you know, I would assume, you know, every teacher is different. I don't know what it looks like. Adriana and I ran the class very similarly. I don't know what it will look like when Alex runs it, but I would hope he would incorporate these 5 tenets like I did. And honestly, I was kind of freaked out at first about collecting data through the class because I was like, I don't want it to stray too far from the objectives of the class, or I don't want it to seem like too much extra work for them. But when it all came down to it, I was like, this meshes very well together because they're number one, they're teaching, right? That's their mastery experience. Vicarious, they're watching each other teach, they're watching me teach. There's 2. Social persuasion, they're getting feedback from everyone. That's 3. And then so really it was just adding in the 4th and 5th of imaginal experiences in physical and emotional states. And so I was just like, oh, this actually works well. And then they were able to see the meaning of physical and emotional states and the imagery of being able to see themselves teach students with disabilities ahead of time. And I think maybe just continuing to incorporate that kind of as I said in my implication section. But I guess one assignment could be a reflection assignment asking, just getting to know their students, right? And just be like, okay, how old are you? Where do you come from? Have you had other careers before? If so, what were they? And then have them think about what similarities do you see between your past career outside of teaching or outside of PE to teaching PE with students with disabilities, and have them think about it themselves and have them come to that conclusion themselves. And then kind of similar to what I did, talk about, all 5 of these tenets and see, okay, today you had vicarious experience. Today you got social persuasion. How do these impact your teacher efficacy? Or how do they hinder your teacher efficacy? That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm thinking like to be very deliberate. What sorts of experiences have you had before this? Okay, and they list those.
Yes.
And then to say, and this is where I think you're like to drill down on the real application of your study. You found that they were able to utilize these previous experiences to help them feel more confident. So by getting them to reflect, and I think you would need to specifically ask them, talk about a time when you did something and you were successful. How can you now use that? How will that help you when you go out to ASLA on Wednesday, right? And it may take some guiding, but being very deliberate in having them make that connection, I think is one of the most important outcomes of your study. I also think, and this comes from me being an athlete, and I worked with a sports psychologist, but no joke, like having them like literally, Tori, like thinking about visualizing them. Let's say you're sitting in JC 120. Okay, everybody, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to picture yourself in the cafeteria at ASLA, and I want you to picture the littles, and I want you to picture yourself, where are you standing? And, like guiding them through like a visualization, like you would do an athlete. Like that's huge,
Totally.
I think that would be a really cool addition to the class.
Yes, I think.
And sidebar, Alex is going to deliver the class in whatever way the Pete faculty tell him to. So, and it's going to be based off of what you and Adriana have developed over the course of a couple of semesters. Okay, that's it. That's it. Okay, so here's what I want you to do now. Can you put us in a chat or yourself or whatever? Because I'm not the host.
Yep. Remind me. Okay, breakout rooms.
Yeah, do that. Not a chat, breakout rooms. And then we're going to discuss for a few minutes. I'll text you.
Okay.
And I want you to come back.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
Emily, I need you to stop recording.
Oh, shoot. Thank you.